Hey everyone, wanted to give you an update on my DIY MFT table. This remains the center point of my woodworking shop. Small one-car garage. I will do a shop tour sometime in the next couple of weeks. But this is my, I believe, 7th update on this, although it's been 18 months since I did my last update. And since I have been using this essentially for a year and a half, I wanted to give you an update on what I like, what I don't like, what I would change, and kind of how I look to expand the functionality of this. So as far as the dimensions of this, I just wrote them down. It's 38 inches wide by 80 inches long, or 960 millimeters wide by 2030 millimeters long. And just to give you a bit of a view from the other side, so this does take up a lot of room in my one-car garage shop, but it has been such a center point of it, and it has held up so well. So I'm absolutely, as far as things that I absolutely love about it, the Osmo Polyx finish that I put on this, I think I did 3 coats, has stood up absolutely amazing. This is still the original coat, and not only do I use this for kind of breaking down sheet goods and preparing sheet goods and all that kind of stuff, but I also use it for assembly. So it gets banged around a lot. I have neighbors over watching the Blue Jay game and all that sort of stuff. And so it does take a lot of abuse, both from woodworking, but also general kind of family and friend use and that sort of thing. So I do have a few things set up on the table right now just to show you how I'm using it. I don't necessarily always have it set up this way, but I wanted to best illustrate it. And I would recommend taking a look at my 6th update if you want a better rundown of some of the accessories that I have, although at the end of this video I will show you a little bit on the accessories. So kind of the main thing that I use this for is with my track saw as kind of a track saw cutting station. And something that did change since my last video is I did move away from my rigid R1412 table saw to the SawStop Compact. It's fine. I use it when I need to use a table saw, but almost, I would say 9 out of 10 cuts that could be done on a table saw, I use on the track saw with this station. So something I did change since the last update video is I got another one of the UJK, what would these be called? Yeah, basically one of the supports. So I had this longer one originally, but I did get a second one. And I sometimes use it in this case where if I'm cutting a really long piece, I do like to have a little bit of support on this side. So that does help. But more often than not, I actually just have this one mounted in here, just so that when I'm working with material off the edge of the table here, it kind of gives me that stop for it. So I am looking to potentially get either the Veritas or TSO low profile stops just to kind of help with like sanding, domino cutting, that sort of thing. But I did add that and I have been getting pretty good use out of it. So yeah, the track saw is kind of the main focus. If you haven't watched the other video, these UJK clips, all they do is they clip onto these dogs. So these dogs are going into these 20 millimeter dog holes, which I created or laid out and drilled thanks to the Parf Mark II guide system, which has this accessory as well as some of these longer rulers with holes and all sorts of ways to drill out the holes. It is so accurate. If you are in the market or want to make your own MFT tabletop, this is how you do it. Like, this is absolutely, I would say, the best way, unless you had a large CNC, but it's great from dust collection, from accuracy standpoint. Absolutely love it. So definitely check that out. And I'll have links to some of the products that I feature in the description below. But with UJK kind of being the company that has really changed the way that people can make these tables themselves, which are essentially 20 millimeter holes on 96 inch centers. You don't have to do them everywhere, but they make a lot of great accessories for attaching things. So not only do they make these dogs, and I've got, I think I've got one of the larger super dogs over there, and another one here, but these little clips, just inexpensive clips that the track can go on, just folds down, keeps them up nice and close, and I am getting absolutely perfect 90-degree cuts every single time. I have made probably at least 1,000 cuts on this table. I know when in some of my original videos, people would say, oh, like you should just, rather than the top being sacrificial, like cut out a bit of material here that you can replace when you kind of work through it. This is what it looks like after a few thousand cuts. Let's see if I can get a focus. So it is absolutely perfect. The only times that it kind of runs off is if one of these clips pops off and I don't recognize it before making a cut. But otherwise, it is absolutely perfect. Even when I'm doing long rips along the table, I basically just use my finger to kind of get the piece in line with where I'm going to be cutting it, and then do that. Now I do still use my foam piece up there when doing super long cuts on material, just because sometimes I have like a whole setup on this table. I don't want to take everything off. So I don't use this that often. Maybe I've done 30 or 40 cuts along this, but yeah, definitely I would say in the 800 to 1200 range using this, and it has held up absolutely perfectly. So I wouldn't change anything about that. These clips are awesome. I do have another method of attaching the track saw to these dog holes for alignment, and it works just as perfectly, but it's a little more cumbersome to use, and I'll show you that later in the video. And let's move on from the track saw to, yeah, kind of how I clamp it, or clamping material. So this is something that I featured in that 6 update, was like kind of the ability to clamp from underneath so that you can kind of route around and not have the clamp get in the way like this. The reality is that I would say out of the, I don't know, a couple thousand times that I've put a clamp on this table, it's almost always like this. So then you kind of work around it and that sort of thing. So like these clamps, and these are the festool ones, I think that they're just rebadged Bessie ones. But this can be handy when you absolutely need it, but more often than not, I just do this. It's a little quicker, and then I just move them around because I have the festool clamping elements. These clamps are amazing. They are very expensive. I think that they're like $180 Canadian for the pair, but they can just basically slide up against material, then you lock it down, and it's not going anywhere. And they're just under 3/4 of an inch tall, or around 18 millimeters. So when you are like sanding the surface and that sort of thing with thicker sheet goods, they don't get in the way, so you can go right over the edge. So these are absolutely amazing. And the way that I use dogs in combination with these clamps is just like this. So I'll position these dogs, butt the material up against it, then use these clamps to hold the material in place. So then if I'm cutting dominoes on the edge, using my left hand here, then I can do it just like this, and then I can release the clamps, and then you're good to go. Then when I need to do sanding, I can sand right over the edge, and these clamping elements don't get in the way. Now I do wish that these were a little more narrow, and sometimes when I am using 1/2 inch stock, I just put like little spacers in there just so that I can get closer to the edge without that interfering in the way. So if I use like 3/8 inch tall spacers and clamp that into between the clamping element and the workpiece that's a 1/2 inch, then that works out pretty well. So yeah, that's kind of how I use it. Now let's look at some of the ways that I accessorize this. And some of this is fairly recent, but even though my shop is small, I found that I have all these festool sustainers, and they had my drills in them, but I need the drills to get out. So what I've done is I've used these little clips, and they are from Stealth Mounts. And basically I can just clip on all these tools. So they're easily accessible, not just when I'm working at the MFT, but just kind of in my shop in general. So I've got a couple over there. And then I also put this little magnetic bar over here so I can quickly access anything that's magnetic. And yeah, that isn't that much farther or much closer than kind of where my squares are stored on a regular basis, but it is a bit closer, and I am gonna be more likely to grab this than grab like a piece of cut off material to try to get a right angle on something. And yeah, so that's kind of how I've accessorized this. I also put a couple of little, what do you call these? Little hooks down here. So I have one of my plug-it cords for some of my festool stuff. So if I'm using the sander or the domino, then I have quick access to that. The track that I have up there, so the 800 millimeter track, can also just go on the top of these and get out of the way. So if I am doing something else on there, I can use that. And on this side, I finally found a good spot to put my clamps. So same kind of racking setup, and gets them out of the way. Yeah, there is a lot of weight on these tables, but the casters that I'm using, I think hold like 1,200 pounds or so. So really happy with the casters that I selected. I'll link to those on Amazon. I'm actually gonna order some, these are 4-inch versions, but I am gonna order some 2 or 3-inch versions for something else I'm gonna be building. And while we're down here, you can actually see that something I highlighted in the 6th update was that I was going to improve all the lumber storage under here, and it has just gotten worse. So one of my intentions was to take a lot of this material and get it underneath here. That is still the intention, but just something that hasn't really kind of taken priority because, yeah, I've just kind of been rearranging the shop, making it a little more useful for what I have planned this year. And yeah, so my plans to kind of further enrich this, I think one thing I want to build is just, it'll be something for me to play around with the new domino, is just build a little bit of a caddy here. So just something that kind of sticks out that I can throw some dominoes in or some pocket screws, kind of whatever I'm working on with some of the smaller loose material. And my other plan is, let's see, I just want to check my list here. Oh yes, something to manage the dust hose. So the hose for my dust extractor, it's great, I love it. And it glides over this table really well, but it also kind of like just, I have to keep pulling it up. And that can just get a little annoying. So if anybody has a great solution, whether it uses 20mm holes or something other than a boom arm, I don't want to have to wheel this around. The hose is long enough to do everything I need. I just need it to hold in place a little more. So one other thing kind of on this UJK dealy-do is these stops are totally fine, but I don't have any way to really kind of get perfect measurements from the edge of the guide rail to where this is. So I have ordered, although I haven't installed it yet, some T-track to potentially put under here. And the idea with that T-track was that I would align it perfectly to the edge of the guide rail, basically that cut that's always there, have it in metric, and have a stop on the T-track rather than this that I can move and then bolt down when I'm cutting a bunch of repeat material. So that's what I'm thinking right now. Now, do I really want to route room for a bunch of T-track in this? I don't know. So let me know in the comments below if you think that's necessary or if it's something that I maybe shouldn't do. So definitely all ears for that. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm planning to build a smaller version of this. So maybe a quarter of the size. And the main purpose is sustainer storage. As well as when I'm working, I just need to be able to put stuff onto something. And sometimes when I'm working on something on this big table and I have a couple small little projects to do, I don't want to take everything off. So my plan is to do a top very, very similar to this. So using the 20mm dog holes on those centers, using the UJK Parf guide system. I'm going to have it on casters. And yeah, the idea is I'm going to probably build it a little lower than this, so I can use it kind of when I'm cutting off the edge of this table or that sort of thing. So use it as an outfeed or support system. So like if I am cutting really wide goods, kind of over here, I could have the table here and make the cut along the outside and have the material support on both sides. And yeah, I had talked in the last video about doing some like flip up extension here and that sort of thing. I haven't really had the need for it. Right now, if I need to support material that I'm cutting off the edge, I just wheel over my table saw and just use the table saw on that cart as that support. So it's not something that I need too often. And the idea for the smaller DIY MFT that I want to put together is, yeah, so not just sustainer storage, not just kind of like being able to work on the top of it, but probably a just slightly narrower version of this torsion box top. So instead of, I don't know what this is, it's probably about 10 inches tall. So maybe it'll be 6 inches tall. So enough that I can still put clamps down from the top and clamp material onto it. And really just kind of gives me that additional surface. And it's something that I'm gonna have on casters so that I can wheel it out of the way and all that sort of thing. But yeah, that's kind of the tour of the DIY MFT, as well as some of the ways that I've been using it for the past 18 months. And that's kind of the main purpose of this video. And just to show you some of the accessories that I have for it. Not too much has changed since the last video. So yeah, I got this clamping system, which from UJK, which like you can basically use these to kind of wedge stuff material. I think it might even be called the wedge. And I don't use it very often. I think I've used it twice since I got it. Dogs are always in use. I could use a couple of new sizes. These little guys, which can go on these dog holes. And then when you put material on it, it's kind of non-slip, so it holds it into place. They work great when it comes to sanding and that sort of thing. If you, like, I wouldn't want to rely on that when cutting dominoes or something like that, but they work great for sanding, so I am pretty happy with those. And I have these. This is the other way to attach the tracks to the table. So basically the track slides in the top of this, and then you use this collar, I'm trying to do this one-handed, to dial in the exact height that you want. So you kind of set it towards the material height, set it like that, put the track in, and it works great. Like this is, if you were just building a whole bunch of cabinets and you wanted to have it at the exact same height all the time, and you weren't necessarily sliding material in and out, well, like that's kind of where, you know, like the feature of this kind of breaks down. It feels much more heavy duty and durable than these little clips. But the great thing with these clips is that you just flip the guide rail up, and then you can easily slide the material around. Oh, I've got it stuck down there. But you can just easily slide the material in against the stop, flip it down, make your cut, and you're good to go. So that's just one of those times where like these are really quite impressive. And if you do position the track just a little taller than your material, you'd be fine, but then you're not getting kind of that zero clearance. So yeah, it's a really nice piece of kit, but I don't know. I just don't use these. I much prefer these inexpensive little clips. So yeah, that's kind of, I think that rounds out kind of how I use this. I think the only thing that I didn't cover is this gives me a huge flat surface area for using these TSO, what do you even call these? Yeah, anyways, parallel guides, these TSO parallel guides. So just having a huge flat surface with the MDF top is absolutely amazing. So if you've been considering a DIY MFT, if you have more room, I would say go bigger. So this is 38 by 80 inches. If I could have done almost a full sheet, well, yeah, pretty close to a full sheet. I do like the 38-inch depth because I can just about reach to the edge of it. I would probably, if I, again, had the space, I would have probably gone about 40 inches wide by like the full 96 inches long. So yeah, that's my video on my DIY MFT. This is essentially update number 7. So appreciate you watching, and definitely take a look at some of the links in below. I will link to the other videos as well as some of the products that I have kind of casually shown on this video. So thanks for watching, and I'll have a shop tour in the next couple weeks.